This time, I want to talk about Rubeus Hagrid.
Oh, Hagrid, yes!
Yes, yeah. Woo! Gotta love Hagrid, right?
Love Hagrid. The lovable giant.
So what do you know about Hagrid?
Hagrid, he's maybe the groundskeeper of Hogwarts. He lives in a little hut kind of on the property. And he's got a big old shaggy beard, and he's a giant fellow, and I just love him. He's just a great lovable personality.
He is very lovable personality and a great character. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
His official title is Keeper of Keys and Grounds at Hogwarts, or also sometimes called the Gamekeeper. And he is a giant guy. He is actually literally a half giant.
Oh.
His mother was a giant and his father was a human. And he was expelled in his third year. Do you remember why he was expelled?
Oh, for keeping a pet he shouldn't have kept, maybe?
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
He did have a sneaky pet giant spider at the time, but really he was set up by Tom Riddle, who was young Voldemort, into making people think that Hagrid had opened the Chamber of Secrets and let the basilisk loose that killed Moaning Myrtle.
Oh.
Yeah, he was framed for that, but there wasn't enough evidence that he went to jail or anything, but he was expelled. So he's not a fully qualified wizard. He only got 3 years of his 7 years at Hogwarts. And the other kind of big thing about Hagrid, as we kind of touched on there, is he loves animals, especially ones that others may think are dangerous.
Yes, he finds them very cuddly, if I remember.
Exactly, yes. So the name Rubeus Hagrid, Rubeus comes from the Latin rubio or rubinus, which means red.
Oh, straight up just a color.
Straight up red.
Okay.
This could be appropriate for Hagrid because, he's sometimes a little bit ruddy from drink. He's described that way in the books. A little red in the face, a little too much, too much of the old sauce there.
Got a little flush going on.
But the color is also another nod to alchemy. Go back, if you remember from the Dumbledore episode, we talked about how colors are significant to different stages of the alchemical process.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, so Dumbledore, Albus, his first name was white, which stood for aestheticism. And Rubeus, or red, is another one of the alchemical stages. And it's the passion or emotion stage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, Rowling kind of set up these two different authority figures or father figures for Harry in the brilliant, idealized, kind of detached Dumbledore, and then the earthy, warm, physical, emotional Hagrid. And these are, two different stages of alchemy and two different kinds of people that Harry needs in his life.
Yeah, two totally different role models. Wow. Yeah, I definitely remember, the kids sneaking off down to see Hagrid and ask him for some advice, and kind of he was a guiding force for them in a lot of ways. He was. Yep.
He made some mistakes, but overall, he was a really great father figure.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I never made that connection. I mean, obviously they're both, were kind of father figures, but that their names actually kind of set them up for that as well.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
Deliberately chosen by J.K. Rowling. All the deep levels of this book.
Who'da thunk?
Right? So another way you can kind of interpret Hagrid is it kind of sounds like haggard, which is looking exhausted, maybe from a night of drinking, or, hatching illegal dragon eggs.
Yes.
Both of which Hagrid has been known to do.
Yeah.
And haggard is also medieval French for wild or unruly, which is also appropriate for Hagrid, both his appearance and his personality.
Definitely.
So you've got that level of Hagrid. And J.K. Rowling has actually said that Hagrid, in some Old English dialects, the literal word Hagrid means that you've had a bad night. And her quote was, Hagrid's had a lot of bad nights. She kind of picked that name as appropriate.
Yeah, I never picked up on, for whatever reason, that the drinking side of his personality so much.
Yeah, I didn't really focus on that either. But it is mentioned several times, that, he's a little bit sauced at the Christmas party, or, he's red in the face, or, a couple of his goofs are because he's, been in the bar playing cards and chatting or drinking and accidentally, let something slip that he shouldn't have.
Oh, yes. His classic kind of, oops, I shouldn't have said that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, a little drink will do that to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another thing that Hagrid could have come from the term hag-ridden, which means worried or troubled or anxious or afflicted with nightmares. Literally like hag-ridden, like there's a hag or a witch rode you or sat on you all night giving you bad dreams.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of a weird Old English word.
Mm-hmm.
One of the major places you'll find it is in the Thomas Hardy book, The Mayor of Casterbridge. He uses the term Hagrid. He puts a little dash in the middle of it. But I wanted to mention it because there's also a reference to Dumbledore in the same sentence.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's a long sentence, so I'm going to skip part of it. But she no longer spoke of Dumbledores, but of humblebees, no longer said of young men and women that they walked together, but that they were engaged. And she grew to talk of Greggles as wild hyacinths, that when she had not slept, she did not quaintly tell the servants next morning that she had been Hagrid, but that she had suffered from indigestion.
Whoa.
Yeah. So he's kind of talking about different meanings of these words or different interpretations or, euphemisms. That's the word I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't want to say she's been Hagrid, but she suffered from indigestion.
Yes.
That's the excuse.
The more polite way of saying it.
Yes. So, but there's Dumbledore's was humble bees, and you remember Dumbledore means bumblebee.
Bumblebee.
Mm-hmm.
And so both of those references come from this book that was written well before the Harry Potter series, right?
Oh, yes. Hundreds of years before. Before. Yeah.
And have in your research, did you happen to see anything that J.K. Rowling referenced this book or novel or whatever it is? Or
I didn't see specifically from her that she referenced it, but I saw people saying that she referenced it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a pretty good chance that she did. I think she's a pretty well-read and well-informed lady.
Yeah, and that would be a pretty big coincidence.
It would, yes.
Yeah.
But another way you could another thing that Hagrid could have come from is hag or hagtess, which is English for hedge rider. And the hedge being kind of as a symbol of the boundary between the civilized world and the wild nature beyond the hedge. It's like the boundary of the civilized world is this hedge. And it's fitting for Hagrid in that, he's kind of half human, the civilized world, and half giant, the wild nature aspects. Mm-hmm. And hagtess actually came to later mean like an itinerant healer or root collector who goes from village to village but doesn't really belong in them. And Hagrid, he lives in the civilized Hogwarts, but he's not a full wizard. He's not a full human. And he's not fully accepted by many, so-called civilized wizards or old wizarding families.
Right.
So he kind of rides that hedge, rides that boundary between these two different worlds.
Yeah, and kind of also lives literally on the boundary of the Hogwarts property.
Yeah, he does. Well, at least the boundary of the forest.
Yeah.
Yep, he's got his little hut in the grounds there. So he's part of both worlds, the wild nature and the civilized school.
Mm-hmm. Just trying to find his place and be accepted.
Right? Yep.
Yeah.
I had one other little tidbit. I found several references to it, but I couldn't really determine if it's actually true. But there is supposedly perhaps a giant in ancient Greek mythology called Hagrid Rubeus, which is kind of very similar, just backwards
yep.
of Hagrid's name. And he was a very kind giant, but he was framed for either, different references said he killed Zeus or he was framed by Zeus for another murder and banished from Mount Olympus to take care of animals.
Oh.
Which is basically Hagrid's backstory.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, there's definitely a connection there.
Yeah, feels like.
How does one author do all of this research? This is crazy.
Right? How do all these things get so fitting for these characters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
Super cool. Yeah.
So did you learn a lot about Hagrid?
I learned a lot about Hagrid, and I love hearing about Hagrid. It just reminded me of how of a lovable giant he is, and he shows you that you can be a real person and just have emotions and give solid advice and make mistakes and still be a good person.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He is such a great character. He's one of my faves.
He's maybe my favorite.
Yeah? Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm super excited that you picked Hagrid for this episode.
Oh, good. Do you like him any more after learning about his name?
I do. I mean, it just reinforces all of what I would consider positive character traits that he has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see who you pick next week, Al.
Yeah.
And if you are too, then I highly recommend that you subscribe to this Potternims podcast. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Potternims. And if you'd like to check out any bonus content, special features, who knows what else we might be putting up there on our Patreon page, you can find us at patreon.com/Potternims.
And please rate and review us in your podcatcher. Share with your friends.
Yeah.
Well, until next time, I'm Al.
And I'm Erik.
And this has been Potternims.